Hello Summoners and welcome back to another episode of ProGuides Best Champion to Main, now on patch 10.21. These champions are all about high performance with low ban rates that are unlikely to get nerfed in the immediate future. They are the most reliable picks in the game that are most worthy of investing your time in. But before that, today's question of the day is who's your most played champion this season? We always talk about what's best to play on a patch by patch basis, but now the season is nearing its end, what champion have you put the most effort into? Do you change mains depending on the meta, or are you loyal to that one champion through thick and thin? Let us know your answers in the comments down below. And one last thing, be sure to visit us at ProGuides.com. We have the best roster of coaches, top tier live classes from instructors like Mike Young and Zyrene, and courses covering a variety of roles and champions from your favorite pro players such as Doublelift. I also highly recommend you guys try out our new VOD review feature. The way it works is that you just send in a replay file and then the coach sends you back a fully reviewed VOD. It's a super convenient option that saves you some time, so go ahead and give it a try. Now without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Starting off things in the top lane, most champions in the role are either lane bullies that have to snowball and then use your lead to force to close the game out early through brute force, a la Renekton, or champions that scale up and then take some time to come online to either split push like Jax, or maybe they're champions that have big influences in teamfights such as Ornn. However, Wukong gets the best of all worlds, with him being a strong laner and a straight up bully against AD champions thanks to his armor stacking passive. On top of that, he also has high mobility and a huge AoE ult that makes him insane in teamfighting. Q is your normal trading tool, with it being more than just extra damage and auto attack reset. If you use his ability, just like his pull, you can extend your range and your lead. You can go ahead and reach well past a normal melee range champion range, making sure that you always get the last punch in a trade. And thanks to the armor shred, you can actually melt through tanks. Remember to keep autoing even if you hit minions to reset the cooldown faster. W gives you a mini dash as well as stealth, and it gives you a ton of room for outplaying your opponents. With clever use, you can go ahead and hit the S key to stop and then juke people out, with them thinking that you are just the clone, giving you guys a chance to escape. E is your main gap closer, and when trading in lane, make sure to make most of that attack speed that it gives you to give you guys faster Q resets. Last but definitely not least, your ultimate is an incredibly powerful tool for both teamfighting and dueling other champions. The super high ratio on flat damage allows you to melt squishier champions, and it also deals damage equal to the percentage of your max HP. Make sure to land a Q before you ult to get that armor shred that we talked about before and get in as much damage as possible. And you even get a second case for your ultimate, in case the first one didn't do the trick. While he may be classified as a tank, MAOKAI's low cooldowns and passive gives him so much dueling power that it feels more like you're playing a bruiser like Jax or Camille more than a tank like Malphite. In fact, you're even able to be a significant split pushing threat, especially when your laner and the enemy jungle are the same damage type. You go ahead and itemize specifically against them. Of course, that's just an option, with Maokai's main purpose being a super easy to execute point and click CC bot that can go ahead and dive and disrupt the enemy backline. Your passive gives you a decent amount of sustain in lane, but it's really noticeable in teamfights, where the spellcasts from all around you give you guys almost constant healing. Q's AoE makes it great for shoving in minion waves, but to get the max value, make sure you use it in a spot where you can also tag your lane opponent. In teamfights, the knockup and knockback gives you a way to disrupt enemies on a very low cooldown, and since it's pretty much instant, you can go ahead and use it to cancel dashes and channeled abilities. W's root gives you the simplest but most effective catch tools in the game, with a point and click CC ability that gives you an easy way to pick up a free kill on a carry that wanders just a little bit too close. E's saplings give you a huge boost to your damage if your opponent is foolish enough to fight you near a bush, but even if they do respect you, the saplings can also serve as wards. Except these wards both damage and slow incoming opponents attempting to gank you. Your ultimate gives you a massive amount of disruption in teamfights, but it moves pretty slowly, so you don't really want to just open with it unless you have a really good flanking angle, and even then the enemy team can just line up so that the tank blocks it. Instead, the most common use of it is to engage a fight with your W, and then use your ultimate in the middle of it to scatter the team, letting your roots hit 2 or 3 targets for max disruption. KLED is one of the most slept on champions of all time, and I feel like he's never really the best champion in the top lane, but he's always in the A tier. He has a lot of split pushing strength, and he is able to rotate or even force fights himself. His passive gives him a very unique feel, with the remount mechanic giving you a second chance to earn your way back into the fight as long as you don't run like a coward. But thanks for you being much slower when you retreat, you're practically required to fight for that right anyway. The dismounting animation makes you untargetable for a split second, making it really useful for turret diving and dropping the turret's aggro. Q gives a good bit of wave pushing power, but you should really be looking to use it as to attack your opponent whenever you can. If you do hit the other top laner, make sure to stay in range for that second tick of damage. The Grievous Wound it applies is so crucial in winning fights against champions with lots of healing. In fact, the Grievous Wound from KLED's Q is one of the only 2 sources that reduces healing by 60% instead of the 40%, making him a really hard counter to Aatrox and Vladimir. Most of your heavy trading should revolve around fighting around your W's cooldown, but it procs carefully. So try to make sure that your Q and E are both up when it's about to become available. One trick that some of the better KLED players do is sitting on a level up point until they can land the E and Q combo on their opponent, and then leveling up their W to guarantee that they don't waste it on minions. E's usage is designed to be a simple way to start trades, with it rewarding aggressive use over retreating due to the second cast you get once you hit an enemy. It's worth noting that the first cast is shorter range and you can't go over terrain, but the second cast can follow enemies even over walls and gains even a bit extra distance. Your ultimate is an extremely powerful engage tool, allowing you to get your entire team to fight much faster, while also granting you a massive shield so you aren't bursted down as the one who entry frags into a fight. Take another look at these top lane builds one more time to make sure that you got everything. Moving on to the jungle, we'll be starting off with Shyvana. Her farm-heavy playstyle gives consistent results as long as you play your own game. The biggest rule with her is not being baited into early fights, especially when you don't have your ultimate available. The build that we have for you here is the same AP Shyvana build that's been popular on the last couple of seasons, but we highly recommend you guys try her out with Conqueror instead of Dark Harvest, enabling you to be a fire-spitting AP nuke, but with some extra fighting power when it's time to go toe-to-toe. Her Q is a simple 2-hit enhanced auto attack, which may not seem too useful on an AP champion, but when you consider the synergy it has both with Nashor's Tooth and your E's on-hit effect, it can help deal a ton of damage. W's area of effect damage helps quickly clear out the minion waves and multi-target camps, with the movement speed it provides letting you stick to targets when you're in combat with champions. E's on-hit damage is equal to the percentage of the target's max HP, meaning even tankier champions get shredded in extended fights. Shyvana truly becomes online once you get her ultimate, mainly due to how insanely powerful her E becomes. You go from being limited to melee fighting to being able to poke down with so much damage that just 2 fireballs can straight up kill lower HP targets like ADCs. Every team comp has its own way of being played against, but most of the time, you're going to want to stay in range and then use your E to soften up the opposition. But if your team has enough engage and AoE and CC to keep your enemies in place, ulting in for that extra burst of damage is also an option. AMUMU is another jungler with a farm-heavy playstyle early game, but he really does excel at mid to late game fights as the CC that he brings is so valuable. Your passive can give quite a boost to the magic dealers on your team, so make sure that you auto attack every once in a while to apply it. But once it's on, your tears will keep refreshing the debuff. Q gives you a way to engage from a pretty long range, meaning that you don't have to risk being punished by poke if you fail to land a skill shot. Your W provides a good amount of AoE damage in the jungle, and it constantly applies Talisman to give you guys a healthy wave clear when you do Raptors, especially when you factor in the physical damage reduction from your E's passive. These two abilities give you one of the best jungle clears in the game as long as you keep a good consistent path. Make sure that you avoid early fights and fight around your ultimate. The massive AoE CC it gives you can let you single-handedly decide the outcome of a fight with a good initiation. AMUMU is one of the oldest champions in League, but he's aged pretty decently. He especially excels in lower elos. AMUMU is one of those champions that, you do more damage the more you cry. Meaning that if you have that one teammate that just can't stop crying on your team, go ahead and recommend this pick. If you prefer a champion with more early game pressure and strong repeat ganks, Zac might be more your speed. He's got a ton of CC, heals a lot, and even provides quite a little bit of damage. Make sure you step on your blobs to keep healing up, they really do add up to a ton of HP, even in the course of just a single jungle clear. Your revive passive can easily be one of the best ways to bait an enemy, and if it comes uncontested, then well, you could just come back. And if you really want to live, then make sure that you have an ally TP to your blobs. When ganking, look to use your Q on an enemy, then attack a minion to pull the two together. This makes it that even if they flash your initial slingshot, you can just pull them back to your allies to secure a free kill. W is the main source of your damage. Make sure that you pick up your blobs to lower its cooldown. E gives you one of the longest range engages in the game, able to jump over walls anywhere on the map. This can lead to some pretty surprising ganks ganking from angles that aren't normally warded. His ultimate gives you an insane teamfight strength, with the constant displacements and slowing helping you disrupt the enemy team, and each bounce generates more blobs to keep you healing. Zac is a tank that dives deep and keeps diving deeper to provide as much disruption as possible. If you snowball really hard and you are confident that the enemy team can't bring you down, try picking up a Leandri's Torment as your 4th or 5th item for a huge increase in your backline threatening abilities. If you want to slingshot your way to victory, or if you're just behind and you want to bounce back, Zac might be the pick for you. Here's a review of the jungle builds one more time. Now moving on to the mid lane. Cassiopeia provides hyper carry DPS, but also with some unique utility. Her passive gives her scaling movement speed while removing the ability to buy boots. While this is a lack of early game movement speed and it may hurt your ability to kite and even dodge skill shots, it adds an extra item slot and even more damage for the later stages of the game. Your Q serves two purposes. 1. The movement speed it gives you when you hit an enemy to help the aforementioned sluggishness. 2. Getting that poison on the enemy is crucial to your DPS since it greatly increases the damage that your E's fangs do. W is the second part of your kit that makes up for your lack of mobility. The slowing and grounding effect makes it insanely useful for kiting out champions, especially for those reliant on dashes for fights like Aurelia or Riven. In lane, E's main use is to secure CS. Make sure that you're using it to actually get the last hit so you get the mana refund. When you're looking to fight, you pretty much want to have to hit your Q first or the enemy has to be standing in your W to get the most out of your E's, otherwise it's just a waste of mana. Cassiopeia's ultimate is all about patience to get the full effect. You want to wait till your opponents get caught up in the heat of the moment and end up facing you without bearing your ultimate in mind. Once they do, hit them with your stun, then throw a W on them so they can't flash out after, and then melt them with a barrage of fangs. One trick with Cass ult that you can do is to combo R and flash at the same time for an instant surprise stun from further away than your opponents might expect. Timing this at the right time can earn you an easy kill, or in a team fight, a game-winning ace. Since her top lane on-hit build was nerfed, AP NEEKO has gone under the radar while being pretty strong for quite some time. Her kit is simple, she has good wave clear, and she brings a lot of utility, especially when you consider the build that we recommended you from running Glacial Augment and then building double slowing items. Make the most out of her passive to surprise her enemies. If you run around as a Malphite, no one will ever want to come near you, kind of like me in high school. But if you take the form of something like, let's say, Yuumi, you might want to be able to bait your opponents into their own deaths. Q's simple lob of magic damage provides you with a little bit of poke and wave clear, but if you are serious about going in for a trade, look to use it after you lock down the opponent so the extra pops of damage lands. W's extra damage on every third auto makes CSing so much easier, while being an active that can be useful for dodging skill shots, escaping ganks, or engaging fights when the time comes. The clone it generates can even block a skill shot like Ashe's arrow. E's root is key to your 1-2 combo, as landing it ensures that you get some extra Q's damage off. Make sure that you cast it through a minion first since the root lasts way longer on all units passed on the first hit. Your ultimate's huge AoE stun and damage nuke can make you a potent team fighter, and thanks to the shield that it gives you, you can even engage despite being a relatively squishy mage. When engaging, your combo should look something like this. Lead with GLP for the annoying slow, cast your E to root the enemy because they can't move anyway and then they won't be able to move even more, and then drop your Q on the CC target. Then finish it off by ulting, flashing at the last second if you need that extra range. Rumble may be technically more of a bruiser, but he has a lot of magic damage to match any mage. Despite being melee, he can easily outshove and outroam almost all of his matchups for a couple of reasons. First, since he's resourceless, he doesn't really have to worry about going like many of the other range mages in the role. All he really has to do is work on his cooldown and then his passive. And then when he's against other melee matchups, his Q's AoE damage and lower cooldown allow him to constantly harass while shoving in the minion wave, without any extra effort on his part. His W shield lets him shrug off harass, with the movement speed helping you to dodge skill shots and go in for those aggressive trades. E's slow makes it so much easier to chase down your opponents when you want to go for an aggressive trade, and landing it twice makes the slow so strong it might as well just be a snare. Landing Rebel's ultimate can take some practice, but once you get the hang of it, it can easily help you decide entire team fights. Fighting around Baron and Dragon Pits or in close quarter choke points in the jungle are the best possible locations, so try to look to bait out the enemy to fight in those areas. In laning phase, if you think that you won't need your ultimate anytime soon and you want to take that reset, feel free to drop that ultimate right on top of the enemy wave as it's crashing into yours for a free recall. Let's go ahead and take out those mid builds one more time. Looking down at the bottom lane, mages are definitely not unheard of at this point in the game, but they are definitely somewhat of a rare sight. Which brings us to HEIMERDINGER. He has a unique kit in particular that can be hard for players to lane against if they are unfamiliar with how to play around his abilities. Make sure to use his passive by cutting around his turrets for some extra pseudo mobility to dodge incoming attacks. Turrets give HEIMERDINGER huge pushing power, and with their lasers after hitting your W or E, you can even turn jungle ganks into a triple kill against disrespecting opponents. They have a somewhat long recharge rate, so be sure to position them in a spot where you can shove in the wave without the other laners being able to do much damage to them. While W can be useful to help shove in the waves quicker, your turrets will do the job most of the time. This makes it more useful for you to use it to poke with your rockets instead for a really quick burst combo. For a really quick burst combo, you can use your grenade first to land the stun, making sure that you guarantee to hit all 5 rockets. But generally try not to spam your E too much. It's crucial for turning the enemies engaged against them. Not only does it stun the targets, but it primes all of your turret's lasers for a huge burst of damage. Even without items in the early stages of the game, this combo can kill an opponent that dives deep into the middle of your turrets. Learning how to use Heimerdinger's ult can be a little bit tricky. It can be tempting to use the ult W for flashy, bursty damage, but in reality, that's just the least effective one. It's so situational at best when an enemy's already CC'd and you want to just burst them down. The other two options are better in most situations, with the ultimate Q enhanced turret being a huge source of DPS. So if you go ahead and put this in the middle of a team fight or when sneaking around for a quick Baron, the laser also hits like a truck. And well, you'll just go ahead and get objectives way quicker. His ultimate E's bouncing grenade is better if you need more utility, either as an engage or a disengage. It's kind of like having 3 mini Tibbers in lane, except you get to cast it safely from your backline. Another mage doing pretty well in the bot lane is Ziggs. He brings near infinite wave clear, sieging power, zone control, and even some huge AoE damage in team fights. While you usually won't be trading auto attacks with the enemy champions, your passive can help with last hitting, but really where he shines is when you get the few items and start taking turrets. The damage you can do to it can be pretty surprising, and if your main job is to kill turrets in your game, you can even swap out one of the items that we listed for this build for a Lich Bane to kill towers in seconds. Your Q is your primary damage, but like with most mages, you want to just focus on farming and shoving a lane in over trying to expend your mana against the enemy laners, at least in the early game. Once you pick up the Lost Chapter and eventually get Luden's Echo, then it becomes easier to shoot your shot at your foes. One trick for consistently hitting Ziggs Q is that you can aim it at a minion that the enemy champion is near so they could get hit by the splash damage, even if they dodge the bomb itself. W has a really long cooldown, so don't just spam it to harass the enemy laners. Instead, use it to disengage when the enemy tries to go in, or just to finish off towers. In teamfights, you can use it to reposition, even helping you get over walls if you need to. You can be thrown out just to add damage to a wombo combo, but the more likely scenario is that you just use it on the choke point, forcing enemies to wait their long duration, or trudge through them, taking tons of damage in the process. Ziggs' ultimate doesn't have anything really fancy to it, so just make sure you throw it to hit a bunch of enemies. I guess one stylish thing that you can do is to use your satchel charge right before it and then guarantee the hit if you can predict where they're going to land. But that might take a lot of practice and is kind of impractical, so don't worry about it. There's also nothing wrong with just using it to clear a wave if no allies are nearby to scoop up the farm. In this way, you can just sort of push 2 lanes at once all by yourself. While most mages are definitely strong, mages aren't for everyone, so naturally we're going to be giving you guys more traditional marksman for the bot carry role. In the right situation, Twitch can have some of the highest possible damage output in the game, but even him being a hyper carry, his lane phase isn't necessarily bad. And with the right support, you can actually be played as a kill lane ADC. His passive poison doesn't necessarily do a ton of damage, but if you consistently apply it to your enemies, the true damage can definitely add up over time. Most players use Q to engage in lane or escape ganks, but don't be afraid to get creative with it. If you're on a reset, you can look to roam mid, using yourself to gank the unsuspecting enemy laner. No one expects an ADC to gank them, not even your mid lane. W gives you a little bit of a setup with extra poison stacks helping you reach your max stacks for a fully charged E, and the slow helping you engage to hit your targets. But what makes Twitch truly a hyper carry is his ultimate. In the mid game, a well-positioned Twitch can deal out some pretty significant damage. In the late game, at 5 or 6 items, he can ace a team in seconds. If you want some tips and tricks on how to become a stealthy, almost assassin-like hyper carry work, well then head over to ProGuides.com. If you want to be a toxic bot laner without actually being a toxic bot laner, then well maybe Twitch is your guy, or Rat. But I guess Rats could be guys, it doesn't matter. In any case that you missed those, here are those ADC builds one more time. Moving on to the support. What would a carry be without a great support to back them up? Soraka starts us off in that area. Soraka is a support that you pick when you want to do everything in your power to keep your allies alive, but she actually takes some skill to use properly. Sure, you can just spam your W and heal up your allies, but if you do that, you're going to be running out of HP yourself. And to get the most out of Soraka without killing yourself in the process, make sure that you're using her heal after you land a Q. Not only does a heal over time effect transfer to the ally, one often overlooked effect is that it reduces the health of your W. While Battle Rocket with max E was a thing at one point, it's not really anymore, so make sure that you're only using E with more purpose than just doing damage. The silence can be great for interrupting channels like Fiddlesticks charging up his ultimate, or it can be used to layer CC when you're receiving a gank. Your ultimate lets you protect your allies even across the map, but you don't want to use it on the first sign of conflict, since the heal gets stronger on allies under 40% HP. In teamfights, your ultimate can be absolutely massive. Once you picked up a few healing power items, your ultimate and redemption are practically a second life for your entire team. Nami may be an enchanter, but of all of the champions in that class, she's definitely the most aggressive. In fact, she's pretty much an outright lane bully with a lot of enabling power for her ADC and her team in general. Donnie, my cousin, if you're watching this is probably why you like her so much. This guy never stops fighting, I swear. Her passive movement speed may seem simple, but the adding MS can be crucial in helping an otherwise immobile ADC kite out their enemies, or helping your engaged champs by speeding them up so they can go ahead and catch your opponents. It may be tempting to throw out Qs in your lane every time it's off cooldown, but be careful, since it's your only one form of hard CC, it is the only way of disengaging the enemy aside from your ultimate. Instead of bubbling to go for the all-ins, you just might want to spam your W to poke down the other laners. To get the absolutely most out of this, make sure that you get at least one, if not both bounces on each cast. Thanks to the changes quite some time ago, Nami's E can now be used to enhance any ally's damage on either auto attacks or spells. So be sure to think about who will be the best to make use of both the damage and the slow. Cassiopeia and KLED are definitely going to be using it a little bit more than Ornn or Malphite. And if you have an Ornn or Malphite in your bot lane, then I'm sorry, you're getting griefed. And lastly, Nami's ultimate gives her a huge disengage tool. But it doesn't only serve as a defensive purpose, but it can also be used as a follow-up on your allies engage, with a huge knockup and subsequent slow helping to disrupt the enemy team. It also provides a passive at double strength to help your allies chase down their targets. The last entry on our list for 10.21 is Rakan. While we recommended Guardian in our build here, if the enemy team has a lot of damage, Aftershock is also really strong. Rakan's flashy playmaking lets you kind of just zip in and out as the engaged team fights and protect your allies. His passive gives you some added sustain in lane and serves to make him a little bit tankier as a frontliner. Q gives poke damage and sustain in lane, so make sure you go ahead and use it on cooldown to keep you and your partner healthy. It even procs on epic monsters, so stack up for the heals while doing Baron and Dragon. W is your gap closer, but don't just use it every time it's up. Make sure that you have your E available and a teammate nearby so you can go ahead and zip back to safety. Rakan's ultimate gives him a way to CC an entire team, thanks to it not being limited to just one area of effect. To maximize its use in teamfight, you want to combo it with your W and just use both your E's cast to tag as many opponents as possible. Rakan is the best when paired with other engaging allies, so you can go ahead and target his E at the start of the fight, giving him time to ult and go for a W huge knockup, and then E out to avoid damage. He's also great when he's paired with Xayah in the bot lane, for very obvious reasons. And now, before we go, here's a recap of the support builds. And that's going to be it for our top 3 champions to main on 10.21. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to let us know what champion that you've made in Season 10 in the comments down below. I can't wait to see you guys back in our next video, and until then, good luck on the Rift, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.